Phantom Anthem by August Burns Red. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that we talked about the last album from these guys, Found in Faraway Places. I want to say it was released 2015-ish. I didn't look it up, so I actually don't know. You guys are going to help me out on that one. So the thing is that this band doesn't exactly have a lot of people who don't know who they are. Maybe some folks that just have not been willing to maybe scope them out. They're a group that has a little bit more commercial appeal, I guess, whenever it comes to some of the other groups that we speak about on this channel. So this review may come as a surprise to some of you. However, August Burns Red, they're a melodic metalcore band. They are a group that doesn't feel like they fit the conventional mold of that title, however. And it's far beyond just the band themselves saying, we don't want to be associated as a metalcore band. It is something where their compositions and their music does speak a little bit for themselves. This is their 7th album, and this 11-track affair, which clocks in at a little bit more than 50 minutes, very similar to some previous affairs. There's some interesting facets that this album possesses that may actually further that claim that this band is the sort of anti-metalcore band while still having a lot of the keystones and hallmarks right there within their sound. Whenever you listen to this, whenever you start this off with King of Sorrow going into Hero of the Half-Truth, some of these were not going to jump out at you as extremely evident. You're going to hear a lot of aspects of the metalcore playbook. You're going to hear, riffing that does have a little bit of thrash sort of sensibility to it. You're going to hear some frantic, chaotic vocals that are all of the rougher, rugged variety, and just the percussion and the drum that really serves as the backbone of these tracks is very big and bombastic and kind of careens around you and sort of knocks your head left and right a bit. But then August Burns Red tosses a little sense of melody here and there. They showcase a little bit of that softer quotient. It's not something that's extremely evident on these first 2 tracks. However, you hear the glimpses, you hear the potential, and really some of those ideas, or they start to boil in your head a bit, like, if this band's able to perform this, imagine what would happen if they threw this curveball. And then you get to a track such as Lifeline, which is the 4th track off of this album, and all of those pieces come together. This is a song that has some of that fury that you heard from the first 3 songs, but then, right in the middle of it, breaks things down, slows things down, makes things a little bit more harmonic, gives it a little bit more of that breather, and it works. It actually builds the composition up. It makes it a lot bigger sounding than it actually is. And this is a very strong song to begin with, so to add that little extra piece certainly grants it a lot more whenever it comes to value is concerned. This is an early highlight of this album, especially considering this first half seems to have a lot of its root with the aggression, with the more melodic metalcore tendency that this band has presented throughout their career, and a little bit less focused on what we're going to see in Act 2, spoiler alert. Act 2 of this album, which could be seen as Side B, the second half, is one that actually traces things back a little bit and dials it down, harbors in a little bit more of those sensibilities heard on Lifeline, really using the songwriting to their benefit and also not being afraid to gather in some of that other stylistic profile in order to build a bigger repertoire. And that's something that you hear especially on a track such as Constellations, which may be the second half highlight, considering this is a track that for its more than 5 minutes is able to really blend both the aggression of this band alongside that softer side, while also thrusting a furious bout of soloing your way in order to build tension and build just a lot of feeling. And this is something that is somewhat repeated with Generations. This is a track, though, that I feel had the potential to be a little bit more. There's a spoken word part in this song that is okay, but in some ways, or at least for me, it kind of killed the mood a little bit. But I have a creative solution that maybe could have been the best of both worlds. This is already a 6-minute long song, but why not make it 7 minutes, toss in a little bit of a little bout of soloing or a little bit of a melodic section that sort of swirls around it, and give it a little bit of extra oomph. Make that period of time, make that spoken word part really stand out. And also, it kind of doesn't help in these situations, is that usually whenever these bands employ these spoken word parts, the clarity all of a sudden just grinds to a halt. You can hear the crispness of any sort of growls or screams or even, clean vocals. But whenever spoken word comes into play, all of a sudden you have to have perfect hearing in order to learn what it is that's trying to be transmitted. It's a weird little thing that I've noticed throughout my travels, and I'm not exactly sure if that's meant to be for artistic effect or just a fault of recording, which seems impossible considering we're in the loudness wars and digital music where everything, if you want it to be, can be absolutely beyond perfect. Hell, we could have made this, instead of 2020 hearing, it could have been like 2010 hearing where even dogs could have heard it. They would come running into the room and be like, arr? But it's just a little gripe that I have. And it's not necessarily August Burns Red's fault, because I've heard this a lot in different songs with different artists as well. If somebody can explain that to me, then I'd be definitely willing to listen. But the album continues with these very nice sectionals that you've seen on the second part of this album. These sort of clean little, escapes from the chaos of the metalcore that August Burns Red usually brings on the first half of their songs. Now, yes, this does tend to make the overall structure of these songs sound a little bit easy to predict, a little bit grayscale. But they add color in the fact that they're able to toss in some genty-style moments with some of their instrumentals. They're able to throw a little bit of a curveball around whenever it comes to the composition. They're playing and tinkering. They're having a little bit of fun just exploring how they can make this sound a little bit different each time. And it makes for a very smooth listen. It makes for a listen that actually feels a little bit longer than it is in sections, but that's because they pack in so much that usually whenever that happens, you expect time to fly, but in this case it doesn't. Instead, you have room for more being packed in and sort of thrust at you. And it's sort of a lot to take in at first, but it's the smoothness of it and the way in which it feels very comfortable within itself certainly aids in this listen. The 54 minutes doesn't feel like it is, overburdening you. It's instead feeling like you just have to take in and swallow a lot, kind of like a very large dose of medicine. So this is an album where I think August Burns Red really turns up the heat. Their previous affairs, I think, have had some real focus, but they certainly seem to have been willing to wash into a little bit more of a let's see what other things we can do to our sound, section of their career. They're really starting to build, and this being their 7th album, it's a perfect time in order to do that. And I think the result is perhaps one of their smoothest efforts to date. And what I mean by that is exactly what was just noticed. This is an album that has a very good flow. Nothing about it feels really off-putting, off-bearing. You don't get veered off course with something that sounds just the same as everything else. So there's really no duds on this song, on this album. The end part of the first half is a little bit slower paced as far as the quality is concerned, but that's made up for with aggression. And I just think that this is an album that shows that August Burns Red belongs in those discussions from metalheads. I think that they're a pretty decent band that has a lot to showcase, and this album certainly proves that. So I think that you should at least give it an attempt, even if metalcore is not your thing. It's one of those things where if you're not a huge fan of metalcore, or if the sound is kind of worn on you, you kind of have to strip your mind a little bit away in order to sort of give it that appreciation. And that's not a great way to approach things. Get into a mode, If you ever find yourself one night listening to maybe an old Shadows Fall album or maybe a Killswitch Engage disc, just pop this on. Pop on Phantom Anthem by August Burns Red and see how you feel at that very moment. So make sure that you have a thirst for it. But overall, this is an album that is a 23 out of 30. A lot of great stuff that's really imprinted on here. I thought it was an awesome listen. It's one of those albums where whenever it was done, I kind of wanted to go back and listen to my favorite songs all over again and then give the whole album a full listen again. So it has that replayability. But I want to know what you guys think about this album. Let me know in the comments below. I'm coverkillernation. We'll get to Marilyn Manson sometime. I think Cradle of Filth's going to be next, or Caligula's Horse, one of those two. I'll talk to you guys next time. Take care.